All right. Recording in progress. All right. So it's happening, right? Yeah, hopefully. Okay. So, well, we're gonna miss on the record the beginning, but that's all right. So yeah, so the idea is that it's part of the cultures of most humans that lived on the planet before us to grow their own food and to have some small scale farming that nowadays we call permaculture, I guess, but it's not something new. It's not something fashion or something elitist or anything like that. And so I'm going to talk to you about what I do and how I grow food very easily in basically the worst possible condition of Perth. Like here, if you're from Perth, you would know that we have no soil, no topsoil. It's very sandy with no nutrients, no minerals. So it's a bit of a challenge to grow anything, but I'm going to prove to you that it's very doable and very easy. And that, I mean, the most important thing is that we can do it without the help of any industries. Basically, you know, the world could stop providing us with stuff from the shop, and we would still be able to do it. Now, to be able to do these things, I've been very inspired with South American techniques of agriculture. And the reason also why I want to focus on these techniques is because most of the food that we eat in the Western world, actually, not many people knows, but it's actually coming from South America, like corn, tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes. Like potatoes actually stopped starvation in Europe once it's been introduced. So we are all feeding ourselves in today's world with South American food without even knowing. All these seeds have been taken from the indigenous people from those places during the time of colonization. Yeah, okay. So now that you know that, we're gonna go a little bit more into details about that setup. So, so it's the first time I do a webinar with Zoom. So if there's any technical problem, don't freak out. All right, so we're gonna share the screen. So I'm gonna, okay. So I'm gonna put on a little PowerPoint presentation so you can see that. Share. Okay. So I close that.
Full screen, maybe?
Yeah, full screen. Up.
Yeah.
Here we go. So, is everybody switched on?
Yep.
Yes, everybody can see the title? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. So, what I've done for a start to get your head around my place and the way it's working, I did a very little small permaculture design of the place, very briefly. So can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is the block where I'm living. So it's a typical suburban block from Perth, which is a quarter of an acre, so 1,000 square meter block. So if you can see, if you have a good look, basically we have the yellow section in the middle. Oh yeah. So if you can see my arrow, I'm going around. So that's the house. So the house surface is just a little bit less than 300 square meters. And so we value that space with the permaculture setup for the roof. because that's where we can collect the water. So the more roof space we have, the more water we can collect. Now, if you're looking on the side, we have some little rainwater tank. They're about 200 liters each. So they do collect water from the roof. And then what happens is that they will overflow into the pool.
Sorry, Raf, can I just...
Sorry.
Sorry, I have to interrupt.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, Jenny, I don't see a button right now to invite more people, to allow more people.
Ah.
That's what we closed before.
It's good. Jenny said it's good.
Okay.
It's good. She can do that. Okay. All right. So the water goes into the pool. So this is for me the most important thing when we talk about permaculture, is to find a way to collect the water that falls from the sky, that is free and that we can actually use for many purposes around the setup. Now, I mean, the place where I am, I'm renting this house. We did setup that are very cheap and accessible to anyone. So, you know, we want to make it such that everybody can actually do something similar than us. So we were lucky. There was a pool that we could use to actually collect rainwater and transform it into a pond. But if you don't have that luck, the idea is you can always dig a hole, create a small structure, and use a pond liner to retain the water, and do something similar. So here we go. So we have the pool, and then on the side, so we have so we're gonna call it like zone 1 in green, where we have all our garden beds and a few fruit trees that are sitting in between each garden bed. And so the garden beds, they are considered for us as a bin, basically, for organic matter. So we do surface composting, layering basically all the organic matter waste that we have around to create topsoil. But we're going to go a bit more into details about that subject. So yeah, and then in the back of the garden, so now we have this zone here, which we're going to call zone 2, where we have a chicken coop, and then we have a worm farm. So it's just a bathtub where we put food scrap in, and then the juice can come through the drain, and we can use that juice as a fertilizer. Now, next to that, we have a compost bin just for excessive stuff, but we don't use it much really, but it's there. And that's just made of wooden crate that is generally free to find. Here we have some beehives, like 3 beehives that are very useful for pollinating the plants and the flowers and create biodiversity and genetic diversity. And here we have a little garden shed to have our tools and store some stuff. And we have more fruit trees that were already established when we came, like orange tree and spread fruit tree and a fig tree. So we had to sort of work around what was already existing. So it's maybe not the perfect design, but it's a design that that has been worked around the existing plan. Okay, so now in the front of the house, we have a big tree. So it's a eucalyptus tree, so native tree that is there to host wildlife, and then in the bottom of the tree, in winter, we're getting some sun in this area. And here we made some permaculture swell. So basically, it's just like a swell made of organic matter that So we can't see on the plan, but basically the slope of the land is perpendicular to those swells that you can see. So the idea is that we can sort of stop land erosion and stop losing water down the street or down the drain and try to retain it through the swells. But yes, I'm going to go a bit more into details when we're going to talk about the rest. So there it is. So you have a quick idea, a quick vision of what we have. So now I'm going to go a bit more into details and talk about the first element, the most crucial element of the system, which is the pool. And so the way we work around that pool is that we've created some chinampas. So the story about the chinampas, so I'm just going to change photos. It doesn't work. Technical problem.
Wow.
I don't know.
What did you do?
I don't know. Here we go. That's it. Okay. So the story comes from my housemate, which doesn't live here anymore, but is a guy from Mexico. And he told me about the chinampas, and I found that was a mind-blowing story. And so the story of chinampas is the whole city of Mexico before the settler came in was actually a massive chinampas. And a chinampas is basically a small, a shallow lake, not very deep, with a large surface, where the indigenous people of this place used to create like sort of floating islands or half floating islands where they would grow their crop. On those floating islands. So if you can see the pictures, we can see the corn and the lettuce growing with all the guys. And so basically what they used to do, and there's different techniques to do it, but what they used to do is they used to put pickets in the ground and create like a small wall into the water and then start dumping organic matter into that hole and then start growing crops on this organic matter. So I just show you that's a picture of Mexico with the Aztec civilization working around the lake. So the idea is also they had a large population and they wanted to self-sustain their large population. So they had to create these systems to not take over the land so much, because the land was more dedicated to build a city. And also it was a good way to be able to have crops in a very desertic area with minimal amount of water. So that's why I think it's very interesting to look at these systems for a place like Perth, because we have a very similar kind of climate than they have. Okay. So here we have a photo with a bit more detailed vision of how it works. So you can see the pickets, the mud, the crops, and then also they were planting trees around the structure to hold the structure for a longer period of time. Yeah, and so the idea about that is that we can grow crop on water, so we don't have to use the land space. That's really good. But also, what happened is that the water that circulates in those networks cleans itself with the vegetation. So the roots of the plants are going to go down into the soil and eventually like reach the water, and there will be an exchange happening between the plants and the water. Like the plants will start pumping oxygen into the water, and also the nutriments, which is basically pollutants. Like nutriments are a form of pollutants for the water. These pollutants are going to be absorbed into the soil and then used by the plants. And so there's a kind of cycle that happens, and so the water will remain clean thanks to that system. So it's really a win-win system. Okay, so here we go. We have another picture, but it's not as good as what I thought it was going to be. But anyway, it's a little bit pixelized, but you can sort of picture. So this is a photo of the last Chinon Pass that there is left in Mexico. So basically the whole city has been dried out. All the water has been evaporated. And they've built the whole city with concrete on top of this existing Chinon Pass. So it's been a massacre pretty much over there. But a few of them are still remaining today. You can visit them if you go there. And this is what they look like a massive network of edible system, and also livable ecosystems for many wild species. And okay, so that's another picture of a commercial Chinon Pass. So there are companies today that are into this kind of systems, and this is a company in Texas which is called Easy Grow, I think, and they do start to look at the systems to implement them on a commercial scale or commercial level. So this is a little bit different. You see, this one is actually not a system. Sorry. It's not a system where they're putting trees and poles to create a little wall to put organic matter, but it's more like a floating islands, but it works the same. So like it's like a raft pretty much, where we can actually put pots and plants, and then the roots are going to go down into the water and start cleaning water. But basically the system is the same. Okay, so now let's come back to where we are. So this is the pool the way it was when we came. So it was very bad in terms of energy consumption. So we had to run the pump all night, put chemicals all day. Bees were drowning in it. I think insects also were coming to drink into it, and I don't know what happens to them once they drink the polluted water full of chlorine and chemicals. The evaporation level was very high as well, because once it's in the sun with the reflection, a lot of water goes up in the air, so we had to fill it up all the time. Also because if it goes below there's like a little level that can go maybe a few centimeters down, and then it needs to be filled up again, otherwise the water will not reach the pump outlet. So anyway, it was a lot of drama, a lot of headaches to have this pool. But luckily for us, what happened is that it was starting to crack, like the concrete was peeling off, and it was actually leaking because it's an old pool. So we talked to the owner of the house, and we got the authorization to actually turn the pool into a pond with a liner. So that was a very good move forward. So here we are, we've cleaned it. We've put a liner down, and we started to fill it up with rainwater falling from the sky. So that's it. So here we are, we can see, so basically with very minimal gear, we just put a channel from a metal channel from the gutter to the pool so the water could run into it. Also, we had hoses, that we find from the side of the road that goes from the water tank to the pool. I mean, we just found ways, cheap ways, to get the water from the roof into that pool. And it filled up through the winter.
Look at it now.
So here it is, once it's filled up. And so, I mean, actually, the pool volume is actually too small to contain all the water that we can actually get from the roof. So to give you a few numbers, the average rainfall per year in Perth is about 700 millimeters. It happens between, say, April and October, November for most of it. And then the rest of the year is very dry. Now we've calculated that we could collect 130 cubic meters of water with the 300 square meters roof that we have. But we can only put into the pool about 30 cubic meters of water. So it is what it is, but it's still better than nothing. Where did I go back? That's weird. Okay, anyway, so we're back to this. All right, so here it is, like 30 cubic meters of water, of rainwater collected. And what happened after a few weeks, or even as it was going up, is that the water starts to become brown, and it's not really good with the time. As you would know, water that stays still, it's not good. That's why when you have a pump, when you have a pool, sorry, you need a pump to oxygenate the water and run the water and keep it clean. But that's where the Chinampas system steps in and becomes very interesting. So the way we did it is we've used pallets. So pallets that are free, generally, like available from the industries. They are, for most of them, heat treated, so there's no chemical in them. So we can use them for many purposes. Build garden beds, build compost, build cabins, and also build chinampas. So the idea is whatever we build with it will become compost after, so there will be no waste involved. So anyway, so we're using these pallets like rafts. So we make them float on the surface. Then we're putting some pots in it, and we are growing crops in those pots. I mean, also crops, but also plants that wants to grow by themselves, like whatever weeds wants to grow in those pots, we let them grow because we think that they're going to fit the purpose of oxygenating the water and filtering the water and create habitat for wildlife. And it's actually I mean, this is at the very beginning, but I'm going to show you after what it's like now. But a lot of very invasive grass, like couch grass and buffalo grass, actually likes to grow in that environment, and they producing a lot of roots, and so they're very beneficial in cleaning the water and keeping the system functional. But also next to that, we try to grow a few crops like lettuce and spinach and stuff like that. So what do we have? Oh yeah, so here we have, like a bit of amaranth growing, a few corns, and a few basil plants. We can't see it, but yeah, a bit of celery. Also, there's going to be algae growing around the edge during the summer, and most people freak out about that. But the idea is to really not freak out, let the ecosystem find its balance, and eventually the water goes from a brown, bad water to a very clean, good-looking water. Also, we had a lot of duckweeds growing on the surface. They do go away during the summer because it's too hot, but now that it's winter again and the cool weather comes back, there's a lot of duckweeds. People see it as a pest. We don't see it as a pest at all because it's fulfilling the job of cleaning the water as well a lot and stopping evaporation. So I'm just going through my notes. Yeah, also the crops that we are growing in the middle of the Chinampas, they are less subject to pests. So like, for example, snails and slugs, cannot really reach the place because they will drown otherwise. So yeah, so there's a few more advantages. So to build it, to go a bit more into details. So as we said, we're using pallet wood that are floating. We're putting pots onto it. And also we're using charcoal. So because we want to make it very light, we're putting chunks of charcoal in the bottom of the pot, and then we put a bit of soil on top of the charcoal. And so it will make the pot a bit lighter. And also what happened is that the charcoal will eventually in time start absorbing all the nutrients from the pond, and then the plants can actually feed from these nutrients from the charcoal. So it's a bit like a exchange platform between the water and the plants. So it's very useful to use charcoal in many aspects of the system. All right. So here we are. It's a photo during the summer. So you see, I've got lots of plant material in my hands, lots of roots that have gone down very deep into the pool. Well, that's exactly what we want. We want as many roots as possible going into the water to create that system. Also, I didn't speak about it so much, but there are fish living in that environment. So obviously, you know, the fish, they need this clean water, this oxygenated water to be able to live. Also, they need this root system and this niche everywhere to be able to drop their eggs. And basically, the whole idea about permaculture is to create as many niche as possible, to create as much biodiversity as possible, to create a balance, because the balance of the ecosystem is going to be interlinked with the amount of biodiversity. So yeah, and so as you can see also on the photo, like the level of the water has gone down. So we can see the liner on the side, but that's about the water we've lost all through the summer. So we haven't lost much water at all compared to the pool when it was a pool. So we've gained a lot with water evaporation. And okay. So yeah, so I just show you like a few pictures, you know, like diversity that came by itself. So the fish, we have a few silver perch and koi's that has been introduced, but also many more biodiversity came by itself, didn't need to be introduced. Like we had frogs singing all summer. We had lots of dragonfly, and the bees are coming as well. They're drinking the water. We got wasps and hornets and birds, and you know, like basically it's very important for the wildlife, especially in urban space, to be able to have access to water, especially during the summer when it's really hot and dry. Yeah, and that's the photo of the Chinon Pass during the summer. So yeah, so obviously, you know, it's been beneficial for the whole ecosystem. So that's about it for the Chinon Pass. I hope I'm not forgetting anything, but that gives you an idea of how to collect water, how to store water, how to keep the water clean, how to create ecosystems around the water. I like to think about the paintings of the indigenous people from Australia, where they always focus on the water holes. They talk a lot about water holes and everything that's around it. And that's something we have to keep in mind, where the water hole is where the life can keep living during the periods of drought. So it's very important for us and for the future to create a lot of water holes where life can actually stay alive, you know, during long periods of drought. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next subject. which is the terra preta. That's another story. So it's not in Mexico that it's happening anymore, but it's still in South America. So the story of terra preta, it's very interesting. So what happened is there was a settler, a guy from Europe. He came with his boat into the Amazon forest, and I think it was in the 1600s, in the time of the 1600s, and he discovered many villages and indigenous people that were living along the river, millions of people living along the river. And he came back to Europe saying like, oh my God, I've seen this crazy civilization in the middle of the Amazon forest. And what happened is that some people came back 100 years after and didn't find anybody. Everybody was gone. So it was a bit of a legend. People were like, well, what is this story? You know? And it's only now that we're starting to discover these remains of ancient civilization in those places. And so a lot of scientists think that when this guy came through with his boat, maybe he would have brought some disease with him. It's a big thing. And wipe out pretty much everyone, not even knowing. And so this civilization apparently disappeared in a very short period of time. And so what they are discovering now is these pockets of very fertile soil in the Amazon forest. So we can see those little pockets. They are represented on the map that you can see on your screen. And so you can see the black dots and the yellow lines. So basically, these sites are all happening along the river, of course, because that's what it is for humans. You know, we need water and we always develop around water. That's why we should be taking care of water as much as we can in any circumstance. So here we are. So terra preta. So when you go to the Amazon forest, there are spots where the soil is very rich. There's a lot of topsoil, very deep down, and other places that are more like normal, I would say, with just a little bit of topsoil on top, and all the different layers with clay or sand or whatever it is, wherever you are. But the interesting thing with this terra preta soil is that in those layers of very fertile soil, the scientists can find remains of bones, charcoal, and pots, clay pots. So basically all remains of human civilization all stack up through the soil. And this soil is so fertile that people actually mine it today and fill up trucks to be able to sell that soil to people that wants to do garden elsewhere. And so for a while, it was a bit of a mystery, like not knowing how people would do this thing. So, oh yeah, I'm just passing on to the next picture that just shows, you know, how fertile that is. But yeah, so here, there's a more interesting picture where we can see the remains of clay pots and bones and charcoal. So if you look it up on the internet, you're gonna see some people that will tell you how to reproduce terra preta, and they're gonna dig a big hole and start burning lots of wood in the bottom of the hole. But that's not the way it is. Don't listen to them. So to do this terra preta, so basically we are inspired by this terra preta to try to enrich the soil. So to redefine this story, basically what I'm going to say is that we can call it surface composting. So instead of having a compost bin where we put the organic matter and then we turn it around and then move it from one spot to another until it's all decomposed and turned into soil, so then we can take that soil and put it into the garden to grow stuff in it, well, basically, we don't want to do that. We want to skip all this very hard steps and create this compost on a surface on top of the soil, and let the biodiversity, let the insects do the job of decomposing the organic matter, mixing the organic matter with the sand, with the soil. And so the way to do this, this surface composting is, as you can see on your screen. First, so it doesn't matter if it's going to be clay, sandy soil, if you got weeds growing there, or whatever plants, or whatever is the condition. You could even do that, and some people have done it on top of concrete, on tops of rocks. So it doesn't matter what is your soil like on the bottom. So the idea is we're going to put some logs of wood, branches, like carbon-rich material, straight on the surface. And this is going to be like the skeleton of the system, where a lot of moisture is going to be retained in there. There's going to be like habitat, niche for diverse insects and little bacteria and fungi as well that wants to live in this kind of environment. Also, so it's going to create heat as well during the winter. So if you're going to grow a crop and it gets a bit cold at night, then if you have like all this wood in the bottom, it's going to create the necessary heat to keep the plants alive when it's too cold. And also it's going to keep the soil fresh in summer when it's too hot. So it's going to act like a temperature regulator all through the year, and a moisture regulator as well all through the year. Okay. So then on top of that, we're going to put some what they call green manure, but basically what it is we want to put like a lot of grass clippings, leaves, or anything green, or if you prefer like nitrogen rich organic material. And that is going to help decomposing the wood, because if you want the wood, you could put like a log of wood in your living room and it will stay there for years without doing anything. It will dry out and not decompose. But our purpose is to decompose that wood as fast as possible. So to do that, we have to cover it completely with very rich green material. And also we're going to keep on doing that all through the crop. So we're going to do one layer, grow a crop, and then bring the waste organic matter from that crop down and maybe put a little bit more nitrogen-rich material on top of that wood, and keep repeating this action crop after crop. So now also they're telling you that they're putting charcoal on top of grass clippings. Now it's going to be easy if you live in the city to get lots of grass clippings, because especially in Perth, you see like a lot of people have lawns, and so it's an easy material to find. Now charcoal is going to be a bit harder to find, but it's not, I mean, you can make some fires in your garden and try to make some charcoal and put it down, but it's not a necessary product. Like, it's better to have it, but if you don't have it, it will still work. So basically the idea is use what you have, use what you can, and layer your waste in a way that it will decompose and start building soil. So, you know, like in that diagram, they're not telling you about the terracotta pots or the clay plates or whatever things, you know, that you can put in there, like bones, or, you know, but it could go in as well. So anything organic that will decompose, that will turn into compost, can go into systems. Now they're telling you about topsoil. I mean, they're telling you about rich organic and coals, but, you know, these things also builds up with time, so it doesn't have to be exactly like that. But the most important part to remember is the wood and the green manure. That's really what is important. The rest is, if you have it, it's more optional. Now with the topsoil, number 5. So the idea is you can get a bit of topsoil from somewhere, or even if you don't have it, you know, buy it, and start your seeds on top of this bump. So you can just make a little hole, put a bit of soil into the hole, put your seeds in, and they will start germinating. And then you just cover with a little bit of mulch around, and the plants will grow while the organic matter decomposes on the bottom. So it's a compost, a surface composting that will compost with the help of bacteria, of course, like we all know, but also with the plants growing on top of it. And that makes a big difference. Because the plants, while they grow, they get the energy from the sun, the photon from the sun, and they transform that energy into sugar, and then they give those sugar to the bacteria that then decompose the organic matter, and then give the nutriments of that organic matter to the plants. So the plants and the bacteria, they're sort of working together to try to decompose this organic matter as fast as possible. So the difference is if you do a compost, a classic compost, then you don't have the plant factor into the system, and therefore the bacteria are poor, if you prefer. You know, they're not really happy bacteria. They have to eat their own stuff. So anyway, so that's for the surface composting, terra preta, agriculture, people call it as well. I mean, if you are familiar with agriculture, a lot of people dig a hole and they bury the wood into the hole. I suggest not to do that, first because it's not going to be as efficient, and also because it's very hard to dig a lot of holes. So the idea is we don't want to dig anything at all, because we also want to, we want to create a system where we're not going to need machinery and petrol to be able to grow our food, but we also want to save our own energy if we can. You know, may as well do it the easy way if you can. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few pictures of what we've done. So here, so that's at the very beginning, we have a permaculture swell. So you can see the bumpy area. There's two bumpy areas. So it's basically what you've just seen before, you know, like same layout. But the idea is also we are doing it in a way that we go perpendicular to the slope. So the water, instead of just flowing on the surface, the water will be retained by the swell and start infiltrating the soil, and also improving the regeneration of the water table, and give more chance to have water available for the trees that are around the swells. And yeah, so it's very important to design these gardens in a way that we're gonna retain water as much as possible. So here we are. So this is not my garden. This is one of the gardens that I'm building. So as you can see, so we can make bumps, but we can also make garden beds, you know, with wood. So it's easier to remember where things are, and the organic matter is going to be contained. And it's not compulsory, but it just makes things neater and easier to manage on the long run. So here we are. We've built a garden bed made of pallet wood with so untreated pallet wood that can actually go back into the system on the long run. And all the offcuts of pallets can go in the bottom. So we can use pallets. I mean, we can use any kind of wood that is untreated with no chemicals in it as a skeleton. Now, that's the same place, but with grass clippings and food scraps and manure and coffee ground and all the resources that are available in the urban space. So all that is layered on top. So you can see the bump is really high. It's going right up on top of the garden bed. It's probably like 40, 50 centimeters high, or maybe even more. But all that will decompose and go down, you know, like it will just go down below the wood level again very fast. And so the idea is we will keep adding to that system all along the time when we're going to use it. So this is a bit like a waste management system. So I try to imagine a world where everything we would use would be compostable and designed in a way to be composted with this kind of system. And so, you know, like our furniture could be made of wood, untreated, and then go back into a garden bed and, you know, become soil. You know, our clothes, you know, could go back into the soil if they were like untreated as well, like the cutleries. The houses that we build as well could be compostable and then in the end go back into the soil. So we have to look at this system as a way to produce food, but also a way to manage waste in our society, because it's really something we need to get on top of. Okay, so here's another example where we are using palm tree leaves. So they're that's a very interesting material because it's very foamy sort of wood, like that will decompose very fast and retain water a lot, give out nutrients a lot as well. So it can be beneficial, but the idea is maybe it's good to have stuff that will decompose fast and stuff that decompose not so fast, so it will be efficient for a longer period of time. Here we are. So this is like food scrap from the shop. So it's all like cabbage leaves and I mean, all the stuff they throw away. It's very easy to access. You know, people in the supermarkets will be happy to give it away. And that's really good to decompose the wood. That's another one where basically, so we don't leave the food scrap open. So we put lots of food scrap on top of the wood and then cover it with grass clippings. So a bit like a composted system where we cover what we want to cover. Here we go. And that's an example of what it becomes after a while. So we can see all the different layers with the sand and the organic matter that is decomposed and half decomposed, and the roots are growing into it. And I actually have like in my hand like a big chunk of soil that have a structure that can hold itself, hold water, hold nutrients. And yeah, and that's in Perth with the very bad sandy soil that cannot hold water, neither hold nutrients. So so here we go. That's a good example. Okay, that's another photo I took. So as you can see, you know, that's the topsoil. So there's a little bit of sand in it, but like there's almost no sand. It's almost pure, beautiful soil that really holds itself. Also, yeah, there's a lot of fungi activity happening. So like that's a photo I took of the surface of the soil. So you can see like all the fungi. So this is mycelium. It's not actual mushrooms, but you can see that there's a lot of mycelium happening because we never disturb the soil. So these things can take place. Here is another picture, and that's a different kind of mycelium that's been growing in soil. Mycelium, yeah, mycelium. Mycelium that's been growing in soil that was dried out during the summer, so there was no moisture, and still the mycelium could colonize the place. So that's quite interesting to see different conditions. So that's mycelium in a moist area, and that's mycelium in a dry area. Okay. So that's it. So that's Terra Preta. I hope you understood how to create your topsoil, whatever the conditions are, and how to make a place fertile in any condition with basically what you have around you. So now I'm going to talk about how to grow stuff in those systems. So I'm going to talk about the seasons of the Southwest a little bit. So there's a big mistake that a lot of people do is that they want to grow their crop in summer and they think that in winter they can't grow anything because it's winter. But that's an old belief from Europe, because in Europe it is like that. In winter you can't grow anything because it's too cold, and then in summer it's nice. We got nice temperature, so we can grow stuff. But here in the Southwest, it's the opposite, in fact. So what we have to look at is, well, basically any climate around this planet have a good chunk of the year or half of the year where nothing grows, where it's either too cold or too hot or too dry or too whatever you want, and a period of time when things grow. And so for us, that period of time when things grows is from mid-March to October, November. So the idea is we can do a crop of annual plants, beginning to end with almost no watering system, or maybe if we're lucky, no watering system at all. So the name of these seasons is, so Geran is the April-May season in the Aboriginal season. So that's when you can start to prepare your soil and get your seeds ready, start some seedlings. It'll still need a bit of attention, in terms of watering, because maybe it will be a bit dry at this time of the year. But then we go into Makuru. So this is the June-July season. So this is right now, we are in the middle of it. So during this time, we are quite certain that we're gonna get some water and that it will be good enough for plants to grow and the temperatures will be nice and cool. So that will be the growing season. And then we're gonna go into the next season, which is called Jilba. So that's when basically it's a spring. So, like temperature starts to go up. It starts to be a bit more comfortable. So for the plants, it will be the good time to flower. So I'm gonna call it like a flowering season. So I'm gonna take an example, like a lettuce, for example. A lettuce, you could grow it and then chop it off and eat it, or you could grow it and take the leaves as it grows. So if we take that example, the lettuce will grow all through the Makuru season. And then when the spring is gonna come, it's gonna start to rise up and start making flowers. So we can feed ourselves from this lettuce without killing that lettuce, and then let it go to seeds and let it go to flower and then to seeds. So during that period, so Jilba, so I repeat, August to September, flowering season, you can start eating flower and the old leaves from the lettuce. And, so the idea is we're going to feed ourselves differently all through the seasons. And then we're going to move on into Kambarang, which is the next season, which is the seed season. So it's the October-November season. And in October, November, basically it's the end of the rainy season. It's the end of the cool days. It's gonna start to get really hot and dry, and the plants are gonna die off because it's too much for them. And that's when because their roots are deep into the ground and they're well established, they're gonna have enough energy, even though it's too hot and too sunny, to make their seeds and go to the end of their lives. And so then all these seeds can be collected and sprouted and eaten. So, maybe it will be a different way of feeding ourselves. But the idea is, we collect like seeds from beetroot, radish, lettuce, and sprout them during the summer to have some fresh food. So so then I'll give you a few photos, like a few examples. So this is the garden during the Jilba season. So you see, like, using these techniques of terra preta and building soil allows for, as we said, temperature regulation, water regulation, which will allow plants to grow big and make lots of flowers. And you can create an abundant garden during this period of time. Here we go. Edible chrysanthemum, there's some cauliflower, some artichokes, some radish, some fennel, some lettuce. So everything is sort of a little bit mixed together, you know, to, well, it's like, we call it like companion planting. So it will be more disturbing for pests and insects to come and eat the crops. And the idea also is that we want to create as much biodiversity as possible, try to create as much niche as possible to create a balanced ecosystem in which we can feed ourselves. Okay. All right. So now we're going to come to the next topic, which is the three sister combination. So there are many different combination of plants that can grow together, but I think this one is very interesting for the people of Perth because, well, first it comes from South America and it's been used with all these techniques that we talked about just before. And it's been used for a long period of time. And a lot of people have been feeding on that for a long period. And this technique is very useful for dry climate. So if it gets really hot, like we have a long summer with no water, hot days, lots of sun, then we can use this companion planting system during this period. So I'm just going to go to the next photo. So to describe that system, basically what we do is we grow some corn. So the corns are going to be like tall plants. And then we can use them as poles to grow beans that are going to climb into it. And then we can shed the floor around this corn with all sorts of cucurbits. So pumpkins, squash, melons, cucumber, you know, all this kind of stuff. But also, like, this is the very basic of that companion planting, but you can use other kind of plants that will grow up, like sunflowers or okra. And also you can sort of, in the middle, put like a few plants of tomatoes and eggplants and all the nightshade family plants like chilies and capsicum. So that's the idea. So yeah, so I'm going to go to the next photo where we can show you our garden during the summer. So this crop of three sister combination, basically what we do is we have our crop growing all the way into Cambaran, like we said, let the seeds do its things. And then we enter the fire season for the Aboriginal, which is the Birak season, so December, January. And this season, well, at the beginning of December, we just let everything dry out, cook, everything dies, the whole garden goes to brown. And then beginning of January, so from January to March, we do a bit of a artificial garden where we have watering system in place and we grow this three sister system. But the idea is because we're using this combination and because we're going to grow only a quick crop from January to March, we're going to be more efficient with the water that we're using. So here you go, you can see the corns that we've been growing in that soil. They were 3 meters high, like they grew really well. And it was the hottest summer, I think, on record, or the longest period with hot days, I think, on record. That didn't change anything. Like the plants grew like really well, no problems at all. It could have been more hot for a longer period, that would have been fine. Okay, so here we are. So yeah, so that was like in the middle of summer, 40-degree day, everything's fine. So the idea is we're going to use a little bit of water to be able to attain that result. But also I think it's very good to keep more life in the soil and keep the soil more functional through the years rather than cook it completely. So it will go through a small period of drought, but it will not go through the full period of drought like it is for the whole summer. How are we going with time?
She will interrupt you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here we are, a few more examples of pumpkins with beans and okra. And also I've built some trellis made of bamboos that can be useful to help the bean grow up, and then they can go back into the soil as well. So the idea is we build a garden that's, this garden does not have any plastic or stuff that we would need to throw in the bin in the end. So everything we do goes back in the soil. Okay, so okay. So now the next elements, crucial elements that we start with and we're going to end with is water. So if you think about permaculture, you should always think about what is your access to water, or how you can collect water, or how you can not use too much water. And so I wanted to introduce you to a technique. So just,
I asked her.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just passing on all the pictures, all this. Oh yeah, so also, so sorry, I forgot to talk about that. So we're gonna come back to that. Also,
She says, just talk about the water management and then hand it over.
Okay, so I'm running a bit out of time, but I think it's not too bad. So just for you to know, we grow a lot of ancient varieties of vegetables in the same idea of creating as much biodiversity as possible. And also, if we have more diversity, then we have more chance to be successful if the conditions are changing, or if the conditions are not the way we predicted it to be. So here we are, like this is a different, kind of radish, another kind of radish, different kind of watermelons, like orange watermelons, tomatoes, green zebra. So yeah, so we produce diversity. Black radish.
Ooh.
Okay. So now this is it's called a Oyas. So it's a system that have been used by the people from the Middle East for centuries, for maybe millenniums. So basically, it's a very simple system where they do like a clay pot, and then they bury that clay pot into the ground, and that's what they use to let the water go into the soil very slowly. Because in fact, with very hot, dry climates, the key to be successful is not the amount of water, but it's the frequency of watering. So it's a bit like if you had to spend the whole day in the sun, and someone would come in the morning and throw like 10 liters of water on your face, you would not survive the day, because you would be okay for a few minutes and then you would dry out. Well, for them, it's the same. So it's better to give a little bit of water consistently through the day rather than a lot at one point. So these Oyas, so these terracotta pots, are perfect for that, because they're letting the water go through very slowly into the soil. And the more dry the soil is, the more water can actually go through. And the more wet the soil is, the less water goes through. So it's a perfect way to regulate the amount of water that goes through the soil. And all you have to do is put one every few meters, and then make sure it's filled up. And that way, you will have beautiful crops in any arid condition. So you can make it yourself. You can buy them. I mean, this one that you have in front of you is something that you can buy. They're a bit expensive though. But yeah, also you can do it yourself. You can get some terracotta pots, create a system that you can see now on your screen, where we have like a bit of maybe a lime mix to keep the two pots together, and you can close with your mortar mix the bottom, so the water will not go down, and then make a bigger hole on top to be able to fill it up. And then you can sand the outside of the pot a bit, to because generally there's a bit of a layer that stops water from going through, so you can sand that layer off, and then you will have like the clay pots that will allow water to get through. So yeah, so this is a very interesting technique. If you want to use it at home, I invite you to do that. And yeah, and here, so that's the last picture. So we are at the beginning of the Three Sister combination crop, and you can see the bump with the soil on the top, on the bottom left, the soil with the seeds that are starting into that soil with the mulch around it. And so I don't have Oyas everywhere. I've got like a drip line system, which is also very efficient, but it's just to keep the idea that what we want is a slow, consistent watering system to be able to grow a crop in the middle of the summer. So that's it. So we're gonna end on that. I think, so what do we do? Yes. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. Up.
Okay.
And now we're back.
Thank you, Raphael. We'll just have a couple-minute break to give him a break. Have some water, everyone.
It's okay.
Yes, that was very interesting. Thank you for sharing your practical experience and what you've created there. That was really good. Before we move on to the video, we'll make the garden tour.
Yeah, we make a little tour.
Should we discuss the question and answer, or
yeah,
sure? Okay, have a drink. Have a break.
Yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any questions right now, feel free to ask me. I mean,
yeah. Okay, so you feel free to unmute yourself, everyone, if you have a question, but we'll just go through with the chat first. What was the question that came up? I'll go first. There was a question. Let me just give me a moment. So that was a question actually from me. Yeah. So do you take with your chinampas, do you take water from the pool pond to use to water your garden beds, or leave it there so it doesn't get emptied? It's its own system.
That's up to you, how you're going to manage your water. So the idea is generally in Perth, if I do my winter crop, maybe the drought is going to come a bit early in the season. So then it will be interesting to have this water available to just give it a little bit through the garden to be able to be successful with the crop at the end. Now, with the summer crop, well, basically, I've calculated that I would just have enough water to be able to do that summer crop with the entire water of the pond. So, so because I've got access to water, I've got a tap, I do use the tap water and I pay for it. But yeah, I mean, in a system with a bigger pond, it would be possible. Now, just to keep in mind, the pond is about 30 cubic meters of water, and the capacity of water that we could get from the roof is 130 cubic meters. Mm. So we could technically water a crop through the summer with the water collected from the roof if we had the capacity to hold this water, but we don't. So
okay, there's also a question here. That's good. Thank you for that. Suzanne asked, she's thinking of creating a small pond. Would she be a full sun pot, shade, or shade? I think she's in Perth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to depend on the winter and the summer as well. Like, for example, here, the pond is full shade in winter because we got trees in front of it. and it's going to be full sun in summer. So, you know, you gotta, I mean, it's not a bad thing, you know, it still works, and, you know, there's no problem with that. Now the idea is, if you're gonna make crops that you wanna eat from, maybe you're gonna need a bit of sun to be able to grow these crops. But even if it's in the shed, the invasive plants like weeds that wants to grow in the pot, they're still gonna make it and grow big roots, even if it's in the shed. So it's gonna be more productive if it's in the sun. Now, if it's in the shed, there's going to be less evaporation, so that will be better for that. But then it will be less productive in terms of outcome. So depends what you want, if you want to keep water or make crops.
Okay, thank you for that. That was from Suzanne. More question. Okay. Bear with me. So that Three Sisters, do you still water it in the peak summer, or do you?
But yeah, that's the thing. So when we did the Three Sisters from January to March, basically this corn, they didn't see a cloud for their whole life. There's been no water, there's been no rain from beginning to end of the crop. So without a watering system, you would not be able to do anything at all. So that's why we try to separate the winter crop from the summer crop, because then we can do the winter crop without a watering system, and we can do the entire summer crop with a watering system.
Okay, got you. Thank you for that. Now there's a question from Aaron. And where do you find such exotic seeds? I think he was referring to your.
But that's easy. Well, I mean, I guess, you know, you can go to your local community garden, or, you know, people that grows this kind of stuff and exchange seeds. I mean, it's always a way. But if you don't have that, you can go on the internet, and there's a website that a lot of people know about that's called Eden Seeds, where they have a lot of ancient varieties of vegetables, you know, that you can just buy online.
Okay, cool. That's good. Now, Suzanne asked, what would be the minimum depth of pond if she wants to build one? Minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least a meter.
Oh, okay.
Because we need to have some form of temperature regulation, you know, and if it's not deep enough, you know, then the water's gonna cook in summer, and maybe it's not gonna be good. I mean, you could have it less, but yeah, then you might need to run a little pump, you know, to oxygenate the water and filter the water. So the bigger, the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Danielle, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask. I'm finished with the messages chat. If anyone wants to ask, Raphael, you can ask it, or I can read it. It was Danielle.
I'm not sure if my microphone's working. Is it working?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, just with the surface composting,
yeah.
Obviously when you do a compost pile, the temperature gets pretty hot inside the compost pile. That's the whole point of it. Does that damage the plants if you're doing it?
I don't know at all.
Directly in the garden?
It's beneficial.
So there's no sort of time period before you can plant? Obviously it heats up at the beginning, then cools down a bit. So.
Yeah, so you can actually start straight away. So it's not going to be hot enough to burn the plants or anything like that. And especially if you're going to do it at the beginning of winter, it's going to be very beneficial, because, you know, it gets a bit cold at night. And so the plants will get the heat they need, you know, during that time. So you can do your layers and start growing seeds on top of your layers straight away.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask Raphael.
I have a question.
Yep.
I notice a lot of the permaculture people don't use any nets for bugs or anything like that, and my garden is plagued by cutworms. Yeah, do you just rely on beneficial flowers?
So you're talking about net for the trees and the bees and the...
For my whole garden,
yeah.
To stop caterpillars and things like that. But you don't seem to use any of that.
No, yeah. So you're talking about fruit flies and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, snails. So I mean, so the idea is, if you're gonna create abundance, you gotta be ready to lose some of it. That's the thing. So you have to share with your environment. So as long as there's enough for you and everyone else, you gotta be happy with that. Now, we let the chicken run around the fruit trees especially before the fruits are forming and during the fruit formation, because we know that they do eat a lot of the larvae in the soil, and so it stops. I mean, it's stopping a little bit the fruit fly problems. Now you can trim your trees as well, you know, a little bit if you want to have more easy access to the fruits, you know, before the birds are going to do so. And also, I notice a lot of the time, if you losing your crops because of insect, it's because you're not harvesting enough. Like, for example, the kale, you know, a lot of people have these little white flies here underneath the kale. And all you got to do is just trim it all off and let the leaf regrow, you know. And basically, if you're not using your stuff fast enough, someone else is going to do it for you. So, you know, don't be afraid to pick your tomatoes, for example, when they are a bit green. So no bugs can go into it, and you know, so you got to be fast. You're a bit you got an environment you have to compete.
You want to explain?
Yeah, and with the snails and the slugs, yeah. So there's another story with the snails and the slugs, is that the snails and the slugs, they know where is the ground level. They understand where is the soil. And so when you start adding organic matter with all the layers, they're still gonna go for that soil level. And so when you start planting your seeds in the soil on top of the layers, then they're not gonna go for them because they're too busy eating the organic matter on the soil level. And generally, the mistake that people do is that they dig out the soil, they clean it all out, and then they put like plants, you know, neat and tidy, like one after another, and there's nothing for the snails and the slug to eat. So of course they're gonna eat your seedlings, yeah, because there's nothing else to eat. But here we have lots of snails, lots of slugs, and we've been starting the seeds straight away into the garden beds, and almost none of them got eaten. So if that can help.
Any other question? Because I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question now. You know, when you said about surface composting,
Yes.
right? The lawn clippings. Now,
yeah.
Is there an issue? Let's say if I get neighbor's lawn clipping because I don't mow, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Will that affect the garden bed? Like if they have kikuyu, will that grow or will that get sorted by the plants growing and the
sorry. So if they have what you said?
Let's say kikuyu or kikuyu.
The plants that are taking over, you mean? That well, that's the thing. So if you're gonna have plants that are gonna grow through the compost, you got to be ready for what's going to happen. So it's better if you maybe let it die off somewhere and then put it back in, or really put it in like very deep in. So we had some invasive plants, you know, that that we've been putting next to the wood and then put a lot of grass clipping on top, and they didn't come back up because they got managed, you know, into the system. But of course, if you're going to put them close to the surface, you know, they might be coming back up, and then, you know, it might be a problem.
Okay.
But the idea also is that you're going to get organic matter from outside to build up your layers. But the more you're going to create abundance in your garden, the more you're going to use the organic matter that's available to you into the garden. And so you're going to need less and less to bring stuff from outside. Okay. All the way to a point where you're going to produce more organic matter than what you can manage. And you're going to start actually being able to give it away to your neighbors. So,
okay, cool. Thank you. Any other question?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yes.
Seaweed. Can I bring seaweed from my garden, from the beach, into my garden?
Yes.
There's heaps down there at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, seaweeds are full of nutrients. They're good. You can use them, you know, as a surface composting. Now it's just a matter of how much seaweed would you be ready to go and pick up from the beach, you know, like it's just a matter of energy that you're going to use yourself. I mean, if it's a small garden, it's okay to go with a bucket and pick some seaweed. If you go to the whole place, then it's going to become harder. So that's why you have to sort of optimize the way you get your organic matter and try to use the least energy as possible to manage this organic matter. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I've got a small area. I'm just starting.
yeah, but it's good. Yeah, I mean, it will work very well for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last question, then we can head off to a quick garden tour, if that's
Yeah.
okay with you, Raphael.
Yeah.
What would be the best thing to line pond with Suzanne's question?
The best thing to lie in the pond.
To line the pond, like a
To
pond.
line, like a liner, you mean?
Yeah, liner.
But you can go to a pond shop and buy a liner for ponds.
Any, because they come in different grades.
There's different grade. Yeah, I mean, of course. But that, I mean, they are designed for that. So even if you buy the cheapest liner, it's still going to be okay to use. But yeah, what's going to happen is that if you buy a cheap one, well, oops, that's not. If you buy a cheap one, it's not going to last as long. So it's like anything, you know, like the more quality you put in, the longer it's going to last, and maybe the cheaper it will be in the end on the long run. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. Now, Raphael, are you okay? I'll put you back as a host, and then you can do your tour. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna switch device. So
Yeah.
we walk through the garden. Yeah.
Yeah. Could we make it probably? I don't know how quick you can make it, but yeah.
Oh.
Up to you.
Otherwise, I can try to carry you.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. You're the host, and yeah. Feel free to record as well, Raphael.
I am recording. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, yours.
Right.
Maybe faster.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's like.
I need your Facebook, your email.
All right, so let's have a look.
Just follow the link again.
Full screen.
Okay, hello. Raphael is going to the iPad now. Just a minute. I think I closed this one. Which I will be able to see anything. Can you join it?
You're on.
The host will let you in soon.
You're on.
No? No. Yes? No? So the host will let you in soon.
Jenny, can you let us in?
Yeah. Oh, you are on.
Yeah, we are waiting for you.
You're on. You can go.
No. And maybe we have to stop the other one, no?
Try.
Okay, so so maybe I leave this one.
I think I tried.
No, you can't leave. No, can't leave. Sorry.
I can't leave. Okay.
Can you use this one then as a video?
This may be called Albert.
It's going to be hard because it's a laptop, you know, to walk around. It's going to be tricky because then she can't see what we're filming. Whereas with the iPad, you know, we can actually see what we do.
Okay, so if you
have any other requests, Jenny?
Because we are waiting for you to accept.
Sorry.
On the thing.
You.
So can I not leave?
No.
It's not.
But I think
Otherwise, we'll close this.
Okay.
No.
That.
I think this is Albert and Simon, and this is Lisa.
Because I'm another name. It's
Maybe
another
it's
name.
another name, yeah.
Because it's another account.
Otherwise, I carry. You can see a little bit.
Okay, but it's up to you.
Okay. So can you use your laptop or no?
Yeah.
Now we're gonna have to, huh? But it's
Yeah.
it's gonna be a bit more shaky.
It's
Anyway.
as cool as it is. Look at that. Yeah.
It's
Can you see something?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. I can see. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we're moving on. So we're just gonna put it aside. Up. Okay, so but we're gonna start with the pond. Yeah, I'm gonna try to be loud. So here you can see the pond. So we have. Sorry, I'm just gonna get a glass of water. So just want to show you that so this pond it's been unfiltered. We didn't use any machines, no filters, no pump, no nothing. And that's all the water from this year and last year. And I mean, that's what the water looks like right now. So I don't know if you can see in the sun. Yeah, like the water is very clean and there are fish living in there and all sorts of things. So I wouldn't say it's drinkable, but the quality is pretty good. Yeah, so we're gonna go around. So you see, so the idea is to have like root system, big root system that are oxygenating the water. Lots of dead weeds, if you see. Okay, and so here we have, you see, floating islands made of pallets, and we're growing some lettuce, and also we're using the duckweed as a mulch. Yeah. So we're using the duckweed as a mulch, so we can build up the soil with these duckweeds. So the duckweeds are very beneficial. We can feed the chicken with it. We can start building soil with it. We can make fertilizer with it. We could even feed ourselves with it if we really wanted. It's full of nutrients and it's abundant, you know, all through the season. So that's quite interesting. Yeah. So that's it. Now, so you can see we never do any weeding. So we let things grow the way it wants to grow, and we always cover it if it's in the way and if we don't want it. But you can see, you know, we have like all these plants growing by themselves, seasonal plants. So generally it will be completely dried out in summer because we don't have any watering system in there, but with the season, you know, it comes back. So we have this clover, and nostalgias growing everywhere. So also there's a kind of balance, you know, that takes place when we stop touching the system.
Do you want to open?
So that's it. So here, I don't know if you see something. Yeah. So you see the weeds can go along the garden bed. And what we do is we just walk. And just because we're walking, it creates the path, you know, and it's a low maintenance system. So here we have a few lettuce growing. Here we have some radish growing. I don't know if you can see much. Okay, maybe we won't go that way. So we have temporary system for the chicken to be able to go. Like sometimes they go in different areas. Yeah, so our compost, yeah. So they're digging, they're doing their thing. We have a bit of composting here. We have a worm farm. Then you have the chicken coop. So we only have 6 chickens, you know. It's just enough for us to have some eggs. Yeah, we can do it.
Oh, let's go there.
Yeah, okay, we'll go to that.
If someone wants to ask something, feel free.
Yeah, so here we are in the back of